The meeting with James Whittaker took place in a sleek office building downtown. He was a polished executive in his 50s, clearly accustomed to high-stakes negotiations. "Mr. Harrington," he greeted me, "your call intrigued me. You mentioned having information about our Westbrook development project." "Yes," I replied, getting straight to the point. "I own half of the land your company is planning to purchase for the Westbrook Commons development." Whittaker's expression remained neutral, but I noticed his posture stiffen slightly. "Our contract is with Harrington Development, LLC, owned by Richard Harrington." "Richard is my brother," I explained. "He owns half the land. I own the other half. He has been representing himself as the sole owner, which is fraudulent." I presented copies of the original deed to the family land, showing the joint ownership, along with property tax records in both our names. Whittaker examined the documents carefully. "This is ... concerning. We've already paid a substantial deposit." Based on Mr. Harrington's representation that he could deliver clear title to the entire parcel. "I'm aware," I said. "The police are currently searching for my brother on multiple fraud charges, including this misrepresentation to your company." Whittaker's professional demeanor cracked slightly. The police, Mr. Harrington, were on a tight development schedule. "This project represents a significant investment for our company." "I understand, and I'm not here to derail your plans," I assured him. "I'm here to offer a solution. I'm willing to sell my half of the land directly to your company, bypassing Richard entirely, and your brother's half. That's more complicated. He's currently a fugitive, and his assets may be frozen or seized. But my half is unencumbered and represents 25 acres of the 50 you need." Whittaker leaned back in his chair, considering. "We could potentially work with a phased development approach, beginning with your portion while the legal issues with your brother's half are resolved." "That's one option," I agreed. "Or you could negotiate with the prosecutor's office. If Richard is captured, he may be willing to cooperate in transferring his portion cleanly in exchange for consideration." In his sentencing, we discussed various scenarios for nearly 2 hours. By the end, Whittaker was cautiously optimistic about salvaging the development, though on a modified timeline. "I'll need to consult with our legal team," he said as our meeting concluded, "but I believe we can work something out directly with you for your portion of the land. As for your brother's half, we'll explore the options you suggested." "There's one more thing," I added. "My brother recently sold my house fraudulently while I was out of the country. The current owners purchased it in good faith, but have no legal right to it. I'm willing to use a portion of the proceeds from the land sale to resolve that situation equitably. But I would appreciate any pressure your company could apply to expedite the process." Whittaker raised an eyebrow. "Your brother has been busy, hasn't he? I'll have our legal team look into it. We have considerable influence with local officials and financial institutions. If it helps move our development forward, we're motivated to assist." As I left the meeting, I felt the first real sense of hope since returning to find strangers. In my house, there was a path forward, not a perfect one, but one that might allow for some justice while minimizing harm to innocent parties. Back in Westbrook, I updated Elaine and Attorney Brennan on my meeting with Whittaker. Brennan was cautiously optimistic. If the retail chain gets involved, it could certainly expedite matters, he agreed. They have resources and influence we could leverage, but we should still proceed with our legal filings to protect your interests. That evening, Detective Mercer called with an update. "We've located your brother's boat, abandoned on the far side of Lake Westbrook. We believe he's fled the area, possibly heading for Mexico as suggested by the documents on the thumb drive. We've alerted border authorities and Mexican law enforcement. Do you think you'll catch him? I asked. Eventually, she said confidently. Men like your brother make mistakes. His face is now in every law enforcement database. His accounts are being monitored. It's just a matter of time. After hanging up, I sat on the hotel bed, staring at the sealed envelope containing the document I had brought from Europe, the notarized agreement where Richard had explicitly renounced any claim to my house. It was time to bring it into play. Next morning, I met with Attorney Brennan and showed him the document. This is extremely significant, he said, examining it carefully. It directly contradicts the forged deed Richard created. With this, we can expedite the process of clearing the title issue with your house. Will it help the Taylors? I asked. Indirectly, yes. It strengthens their claim against the title insurance company, which will be responsible for compensating them if they lose the house. Or, as we discussed, it gives us leverage to negotiate a settlement where you receive compensation instead of repossession. We filed the necessary legal papers that day, including a copy of Richard's renunciation document. Brennan also drafted a letter to the Taylors' attorney, outlining our position but also expressing my willingness to find an equitable solution that wouldn't displace their family. 3 days later, I received a call from James Whitaker. Mr. Harrington, our legal team has reviewed everything and we're prepared to make you an offer for your portion of the development land. Additionally, we've been in contact with the title company that handled your house sale. They're eager to resolve the situation to avoid further liability. The offer for my half of the land was substantial, $1.6 million, slightly more than what Richard would have received for it as part of his fraudulent deal. The title company, under pressure from both the retail chain and the emerging evidence of fraud, was offering to compensate me for the full value of my house, plus additional damages, while allowing the Taylors to retain ownership. It wasn't the outcome I had initially wanted when I returned to find strangers in my home, but it felt like justice of a sort. I would receive fair compensation for both properties. The Taylors could keep the home they had purchased in good faith. The retail development could proceed, bringing jobs and economic growth to Westbrook, and Richard, when caught, would face consequences for his actions. There was just one more piece to resolve Claire's belongings. With the legal framework in place for resolving both the land development and the house ownership, I finally reached out to the Taylors directly. Attorney Brennan had advised against this initially, but now that the title company had agreed to a settlement, it seemed appropriate to have a conversation about Claire's personal possessions. Lisa Taylor sounded apprehensive when I called, which was understandable. From her perspective, a stranger was claiming her family's home wasn't legally theirs. Mr. Harrington, she said cautiously, our attorney advised us not to speak with you directly. I understand, I replied, and I respect that. I'm not calling about the house itself. That's being handled through the proper legal channels. I'm calling about some personal items that were in the house when it was sold, things that belonged to my late wife. There was a pause on the line. Your wife's things. We were told the house was being sold because the owner was moving abroad permanently. The personal items that remained were included in the sale. That's what my brother told you, I explained gently. But it wasn't true. I was on a temporary sabbatical after my wife's death. I never intended to sell the house or her belongings. Another long pause. I'm so sorry, she finally said, her voice softening. We had no idea. What kind of items are you referring to? I described Claire's book collection, her journals, the family photographs and heirlooms that had been in the house. They have tremendous sentimental value to me, I explained. I understand you purchased the house and its contents in good faith, but these items, they're all I have left of her. Of course, Lisa said, sounding genuinely sympathetic now. We haven't disposed of anything. Most of the personal items we found are boxed up in the garage. We weren't sure what to do with them. Relief washed over me. Would it be possible for me to come by and look through those boxes? I promise I'm not trying to complicate the house situation. The settlement with the title company is proceeding, and you'll be able to keep the house. Let me discuss it with my husband, she said, but I think that would be all right. No one should lose their memories of a loved one. 2 days later, I stood in the driveway of what had once been my home, feeling like a visitor to my own past. The house looked different, already new curtains in the windows, children's bicycles on the lawn, a different color on the front door. The Taylors had made it their own. Lisa Taylor met me outside, a petite woman with kind eyes and a cautious smile. Mr. Harrington, it's good to meet you in person. I'm so sorry about the circumstances. Please, call me Oswald, I said, shaking her hand, and thank you for allowing me to come. The boxes are in the garage, she explained, leading the way. We've been using it mostly for storage since we moved in. There were quite a few personal items left behind. The garage had once been my workshop, where I'd built bookshelves and repaired furniture. Now it was filled with moving boxes and the Taylors' overflow possessions. Along one wall were about a dozen cardboard boxes labeled house contents. These were here when we moved in, Lisa explained. The real estate agents said they were included in the sale, but we weren't sure what to do with them. It felt strange going through someone else's belongings. I approached the boxes with a mixture of anticipation and dread. May I, of course? Take your time, I'll give you some privacy. As Lisa stepped back into the house, I opened the first box. Inside were Booksclare's beloved collection of classic literature and poetry. I lifted out a volume of Emily Dickinson, remembering how Claire would read aloud from it on quiet evenings. The familiar weight of the book in my hands brought tears to my eyes. Box after box revealed the artifacts of our life together: photo albums, Claire's journals, the quilt her grandmother had made, the collection of vintage teacups she'd inherited from her mother. Not everything was there. Some larger items were presumably still in the house, and some things may have been discarded or kept by Richard, but the most precious mementos had been preserved. In the second Tulis box, I found something unexpected: small wooden chest I didn't recognize. Opening it revealed dozens of handwritten letters tied with ribbon, all addressed to me in Claire's distinctive handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened one. My dearest Oswald, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you found the letters I never sent. After my diagnosis, I started writing to you letters for you to read after I was no longer here. One for each month of the first year without me, and then several for special occasions in the years to come. I asked Elaine to give them to you. Gradually, but perhaps things didn't work out that way. Know that I loved you completely, and that my greatest wish is for you to find joy again. Grieve me, remember me, but then live fully, my love. The world has so much beauty still to show you. All my heart. Claire. I sat on the concrete floor of the garage, letters scattered around me, overwhelmed by this unexpected gift. Claire's voice, reaching out to me from beyond death, guiding me through the grief I'd been struggling with for 3 years. I was still sitting there when Lisa returned, concern on her face. Oswald, are you all right? I looked up, tears streaming down my face. I found letters from my wife. Letters I was meant to receive after her death, but never did because of everything that happened. Lisa's expression softened with compassion. "Would you like some water or coffee?" "Coffee would be wonderful," I admitted. "If it's not too much trouble." "Not at all. Please, come inside." I hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to intrude. It's the least we can do," she insisted. "And honestly, I have questions. About the house. About what happened." Our attorney explained some of it, but it's all been so confusing. I followed her into what had once been my kitchen, now transformed with different appliances and decor. Lisa's husband, Mark, was there with their 2 children, a boy about 10 and a girl who looked around 7. "Kids, this is Mr. Harrington," Lisa explained. "He used to live in this house before us." The children regarded me with curious eyes as Mark stepped forward to shake my hand. "Mr. Harrington, this is an unusual situation. Please, call me Oswald," I said again, "and yes, it is. I want to assure you that I'm not here to disrupt your family's life. The legal issues with the house are being resolved in a way that allows you to keep it." Mark's posture relaxed slightly. Our attorney mentioned a settlement was being discussed. Something about title insurance covering the ... irregularities in the sale. "That's right," I confirmed as Lisa handed me a cup of coffee. "The title company failed to detect the fraudulent documents my brother used to sell the house. They're liable for the damages, which means they'll compensate me while you retain ownership. And your brother?" Mark asked. Our attorney mentioned he's ... wanted by police. "Yes, for multiple fraud charges, including selling this house without authorization. The police are still searching for him." The children were listening with wide eyes, clearly finding this real-life drama fascinating. Lisa noticed and suggested they go play in the backyard. Once they were gone, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Claire and I had shared countless meals. "We had no idea," Lisa said, shaking her head. "When we bought the house, everything seemed normal. Richard, your brother, was charming. Said he was selling because his brother Hugh had decided to settle permanently in Europe after his wife's passing. A convenient story," I said, "and one that the real estate agent and title company didn't verify properly." "What will happen to him?" Mark asked. "When they catch him?" "Prison, most likely. The fraud charges are substantial, and there's evidence. He was planning to flee the country with a false identity." We talked for nearly an hour. I shared the story of Claire, of my sabbatical to process my grief, and of returning to find my life upended. The Taylors shared how they had fallen in love with the house, seeing it as the perfect place to raise their children. "We can help you look for any other items that might have been your wife's," Lisa offered. "There are still a few things around the house that came with its artwork, some furniture pieces." "I appreciate that," I said sincerely, "but I don't want to disrupt your home more than necessary." The most important things were in those boxes: Claire's books, our photos, her letters. As I prepared to leave with the boxes of Claire's belongings, Mark helped me load them into my rental car. "I'm sorry for what you've been through," he said. "Losing your wife, then having your brother betray you like this. It's unimaginable. Life rarely follows the path we expect," I replied. "But I'm grateful that at least this part of the story is ending with some measure of grace. You have a beautiful family and a wonderful home. Claire would be happy to know the house is filled with children and love again." Back at the hotel, I spent hours reading through Claire's letters, each one a precious connection to her. Some made me laugh, others brought tears, but all of them carried her essence, her wisdom, her humor, her boundless capacity for love. One letter in particular stood out. It was dated for what would have been our anniversary the following year. My darling Oswald, on this day that once marked our celebration of love, I want to remind you of something important. Home isn't a place. It's not the walls that surrounded us or the roof that sheltered us. Home is what we built together in our hearts. I know how much you loved our house on Maple Street. The way the light filtered through the kitchen windows in the morning. The creaky third step on the staircase that we never fixed. The garden where we spent so many summer evenings. But those are just settings for our story, not the story itself. Wherever you are as you read this, know that you carry our home with you. In your memories, in the habits we formed together, in the person you became during our years side by side. No one can take that from you, my love. Not ever. If circumstances have changed, the house is no longer yours. Or if you've chosen to move on to new spaces, please don't cling to the physical structure out of loyalty to me. I am not in those walls. I am in your heart, where no thief can reach, where no document can transfer ownership. Build new memories, Oswald. Create new spaces of joy. This isn't betrayal, it's the greatest honor you could give to what we shared. Forever yours, Claire. I sat on the hotel bed, the letter trembling in my hands, feeling as though Claire had somehow foreseen exactly what would happen. Or perhaps she had simply understood me well enough to know that I might someday need permission to let go of the physical reminders of our life together. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The anger I had been carrying since discovering Richard's betrayal didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip on my heart. The grief over losing the house transformed into something lighter, bittersweet acknowledgement that this chapter was closing, making way for whatever came next. 2 weeks later, I was settling into a small rented apartment near the university where I taught. The settlement with the title company had been finalized, providing me with compensation for the house, plus additional damages. The deal with the retail chain for my half of the development land was proceeding. With the final contracts being prepared, I had arranged Claire's books on new shelves, hung our photographs on fresh walls, and placed her letters in a special box on my nightstand, reading one each evening before sleep. It wasn't the same as our house on Maple Street, but it was becoming home in its own way. Elaine visited often, helping me organize and bringing home-cooked meals. Our relationship had grown stronger through the ordeal, the shared betrayal by Richard creating a new bond between us. Any news about Richard? She asked one evening as we shared dinner at my small kitchen table. Nothing concrete, I replied. Detective Mercer says they've had reports of sightings in Mexico, but nothing confirmed yet. Do you think he'll ever face consequences? Elaine wondered, pushing food around her plate. I believe he will, I said. Men like Richard, they can't help but make mistakes. His ego won't allow him to live quietly. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Detective Mercer. Mr. Harrington, she said when I answered. I thought you'd want to know immediately. We've apprehended your brother. My heart skipped a beat. Where? Cancun, Mexico. He was staying at a luxury resort under his alias, Robert Harrison. Made it easy for us, used his fake passport to book a parasailing excursion. The tour company's system flagged the passport number we distributed to international law enforcement. Is he being extradited? I asked, meeting Elaine's wide-eyed gaze across the table. Yes. He'll be back in the US within 48 hours to face charges. Multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and now flight to avoid prosecution. After thanking Detective Mercer and hanging up, I relayed the news to Elaine. She sat back in her chair, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. "I should feel happy," she said quietly, "but mostly I just feel sad. Sad that it came to this, that our brother became someone capable of such calculated harm." I understood exactly what she meant. The satisfaction of knowing Richard would face. Justice was tempered by the tragedy of how far he had fallen. Richard's return and subsequent arraignment became local news. The story had all the elements that fascinated people: family, betrayal, fraud, a fugitive captured in a tropical paradise. I avoided the coverage as much as possible, focusing instead on rebuilding my life. The prosecutor handling Richard's case contacted me about testifying against him. "Your testimony will be crucial," she explained, "particularly regarding the forged documents and your ownership of the properties in question." I agreed, though the prospect of facing Richard in court filled me with dread. Not because I feared him, but because I wasn't sure what I would feel seeing my brother, the boy I had grown up with, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework in handcuffs, facing years in prison. The day before the preliminary hearing, I received an unexpected call from Richard's attorney. "Mr. Harrington, my name is Edward Simmons. I represent your brother, Richard. He's requested a meeting with you before tomorrow's hearing." "A meeting? Why?" I asked, suspicious of Richard's motives. "He says he has information you'll want to hear. Regarding your wife's possessions." My heart raced. "What about them?" "He wouldn't tell me specifics. He insists on speaking with you directly." I considered refusing. Richard was manipulative, and this could be another ploy. But the mention of Claire's possessions items that might still be missing from what I'd recovered was too important to ignore. "I'll meet with him," I decided, but only in the presence of his attorney and mine. The meeting was arranged for that afternoon at the county jail. I called Attorney Brennan, who agreed to accompany me, though he cautioned against expecting anything productive from the encounter. The county jail was a stark, institutional building on the outskirts of town. After passing through security and surrendering my personal items, I was led to a small conference room. Richard was already there, seated at a table, his hands cuffed in front of him. His attorney sat beside him. Richard looked diminished somehow. The confident, polished businessman was gone, replaced by a man in an orange jumpsuit with shadows under his eyes and several days' growth of beard. He looked up as I entered with Attorney Brennan, and for a brief moment, I saw something unfamiliar. In his expression, "Shame, Oz," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from him, maintaining a neutral expression. "Your attorney said you have information about Claire's possessions." Richard nodded. "I do. When I arranged the sale of the house, I removed certain items first. Things I knew had value, both monetary and sentimental." "You stole them?" I clarified. "Yes," he admitted, looking down at his cuffed hands. "I took jewelry, some artwork, Claire's collection of first edition books, and a few other valuable items. I sold some of them. Others are in a storage unit in Westbrook, where I demanded secure space storage on Highway 16, Unit 237. The key is with my personal effects that were confiscated when I was arrested." I glanced at his attorney, who nodded confirmation. "We can arrange for the key to be released to you, Mr. Harrington. Why are you telling me this now?" I asked Richard directly. He was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm facing 20 years, Oz. 20 years. The prosecutor has offered a plea deal 12 years if I cooperate fully, return or account for all stolen property, and plead guilty to all charges. So this is about reducing your sentence, I said flatly. Partly, he acknowledged. But also, I've had time to think in here about what I did to you. To Elaine, to those people living in your house now. The Taylors, I supplied. Yes, the Taylors. Innocent people caught in my ... my scheme. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Oz. What I did was unforgivable, but I want to try to make what amends I can. I studied my brother's face, looking for the manipulation, the calculation I had come to expect from him. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, the brother I had once known, before ambition and resentment had twisted him. There's something else, Richard continued when I didn't respond. Something I think you should know before the hearing tomorrow. What's that? The document you presented, the one where I renounced any claim to your house. I knew about it. This surprised me. You knew, yes. I found it when I was going through your office before selling the house. I saw it, read it, and chose to ignore it. That's why I had to forge the deed showing joint ownership to override that document. I knew what I was doing was wrong, Oz. I knew exactly what I was doing. His admission stunned me. I had assumed Richard had sold the house, believing he could get away with it through legal technicalities or by exploiting my absence. But he had knowingly violated a legal document he had signed, deliberately committing fraud with full awareness of the consequences. Why are you telling me this? I asked. It only makes what you did worse. Because it's the truth, he said simply. And because I'm tired of lying. To you, to Elaine, to myself. I've been lying for so long, I barely remember what the truth feels like. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession hanging between us. The storage unit, I finally said. Is there anything else I should know about it? The code to enter the facility is 5529. The unit has climate control for the books. Everything should be as I left it. I nodded and stood to leave, having heard what I came for. Oz, Richard called as I turned toward the door. One more thing. In the storage unit, there's a small safe. The combination is Claire's birthday month. Day, year, no spaces. Inside is the original deed to the house. I took it when I was preparing the forgery, I thought. I thought you should have it back. I paused, then nodded once without turning around and left the room. Outside the jail, Attorney Brennan placed a hand on my shoulder. Are you all right? I'm not sure, I admitted. I came expecting to face the same manipulative Richard who sold my house and tried to steal my land. Instead, I found ... I don't know what I found. People can change, Brennan offered, especially when confronted with the consequences of their actions. Perhaps, I said, unconvinced. Or perhaps this is just another performance. We arranged for Richard's personal effects to be released, retrieving the key to the storage unit. That evening, Elaine accompanied me to secure space storage on Highway 16. The facility was modern and well maintained, with rows of identical units behind a security gate. I entered the code Richard had provided, and the gate slid open silently. Unit 237 was toward the back of the complex. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and I rolled up the door to reveal a space about the size of a small bedroom filled with carefully arranged items. Oh my God, Elaine breathed as we stepped inside. There, organized on shelves and in protective cases, were the missing pieces of my life with Claire. Her jewelry collection, including the pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother, the artwork we had collected over the years, each piece wrapped in protective material, Claire's valuable first edition books, arranged alphabetically just as she had kept them at home. In one corner stood the antique writing desk that had been Claire's favorite piece of furniture, where she had written her poetry and letters. On another shelf were photo albums I hadn't found among the boxes at the tailor's house, surlier ones, from the beginning of our relationship, and on a small table in the center of the unit sat a safe, just as Richard had described. I approached it slowly, keying in Claire's birthday. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing the original deed to our house on Maple Street. Along with other important documents, Richard had taken our marriage certificate, Claire's will, insurance policies. But there was something else in the safe, something unexpected. A handwritten letter from Richard, dated just before he fled the country. Oz. If you're reading this, then things have not gone according to my plan. I prepared this storage unit as a contingency, a way to return what I took from you if my scheme failed. I tell myself I kept these things safe because they might be valuable, but the truth is more complicated. Perhaps I wanted to preserve some connection to the family I was betraying. Perhaps I couldn't bring myself to destroy these memories entirely. I know an apology is worthless after what I've done. I broke the most fundamental bonds of family. I stole not just your property, but your memories, your connection to Claire, your sense of security and trust. There is no justification for my actions, only explanations that sound hollow even to McGreed: resentment, a pathetic need to prove myself superior after living in your shadow for so long. The irony is that you never placed me in your shadow. I put myself there through my own insecurity and envy of the life you and Claire built, a life based on love and mutual respect, rather than the constant acquisition of status and wealth that has driven me. If you never forgive me, I understand. I'm not sure I would forgive me either. Richard I handed the letter to Elaine, who read it silently, tears forming in her eyes. Do you think he meant it? She asked. Or was this just another backup plan, a way to gain sympathy if he was caught? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe both. Maybe he's so tangled in his own deceptions that even he doesn't know what's genuine anymore. We spent hours in that storage unit, cataloging its contents, marveling at how meticulously Richard had preserved these pieces of my past, even as he was destroying my present. It was a contradiction. I couldn't reconcile the brother who would forge documents to steal my house, yet carefully wrap Claire's delicate porcelain figurines to prevent damage. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. We locked the unit, planning to return with a moving truck the following day after Richard's hearing. What will you say tomorrow? Elaine asked, as we drove back to my apartment. When you testify. The truth, I said simply. That's all I can offer. The truth about what Richard did, about the documents, about the impact of his actions, and about this, she gestured back toward the storage facility, about him preserving Claire's things. I considered this. That too. It doesn't erase what he did, but it's part of the full picture. The court should have all the facts. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse, prepared to testify at Richard's preliminary hearing. The courtroom was more crowded than I expected, with local media present due to the high-profile nature of the case. Richard sat at the defense table with his attorney, still in his orange jumpsuit, but looking more composed than he had at the jail. When our eyes met, he gave a small, solemn nod. which I returned almost involuntarily. The hearing proceeded with the prosecutor outlining the charges against Richard: multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and flight to avoid. Prosecution: when called to testify, I recounted the events as they had occurred, returning from Europe to find my house sold, discovering Richard's forgeries, the confrontation at the lake house, and finally, the recovery of Claire's possessions from the storage unit. "And in your opinion, Mr. Harrington," the prosecutor asked, "did your brother understand that what he was doing was illegal when he forged these documents and sold your house?" I looked directly at Richard as I answered, "Yes, by his own admission. He found and read a document in which he had previously renounced any claim to my house. He deliberately chose to ignore that legal agreement and proceed with the forgery and sale. He knew exactly what he was doing." Richard's expression didn't change, but I saw his shoulders slump slightly. However, I continued, surprising the prosecutor. "I also believe he took steps to preserve items of sentimental value to me. The storage unit where he kept Claire's, my late wife's, possessions was meticulously organized and climate-controlled to protect delicate items. He left a letter explaining that he had created this contingency in case his plans failed. Are you suggesting this mitigates his crimes?" the prosecutor asked, clearly not pleased with this unexpected testimony. "No," I said firmly. "What he did was wrong, calculated, and caused tremendous harm to multiple people. I'm simply providing the complete picture, as requested. My brother committed serious crimes, but he also took steps that suggest some level of remorse, or at least ambivalence, about his actions." The hearing concluded with the judge finding sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Richard's attorney announced that they were in plea negotiations with the prosecutor's office, suggesting that a trial might be avoided. As Richard was led from the courtroom, he paused near where I sat in the gallery. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for telling the whole truth." "It wasn't for you," I replied. "It was for me, for who I need to be." He nodded in understanding before the bailiff guided him toward the door. Outside the courthouse, I found myself surrounded by reporters asking for comments about the case. I declined to speak, pushing through the crowd to where Elaine waited by her car. "You okay?" she asked as we drove away. "Yes," I said, surprised to find it was true. "For the first time in a long while, I think I am." In the months that followed, life settled into a new pattern. Richard accepted a plea deal, 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 7, in exchange for full cooperation and guilty pleas to all charges. The retail development proceeded with my half of the land, while Richard's portion was held in legal limbo, eventually to be sold at auction to satisfy claims against him. I used the compensation from the title company and the proceeds from the land sale to purchase a small house near the university, nothing as grand as the home on Maple Street, but a comfortable space that I gradually made my own. Claire's possessions, recovered from the storage unit, found new places in this new home. Her books lined the shelves of my study. Her writing desk sat by a window overlooking a small garden I was cultivating. The Taylors and I maintained an unexpected friendship. Their children were fascinated by the history of their house, and Lisa occasionally consulted me about original features they were considering restoring. I found these conversations healing rather than painful, way to honor the home Claire and I had loved, while accepting that it now belonged to another family's story. Elaine visited often, sometimes bringing items she thought might complement Claire's collections. I found this at an estate sale, she might say, presenting a teacup similar to ones Claire had collected. I thought it belonged with the others. 6 months after Richard's sentencing, I received a letter from him. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won out. Oz, prison provides ample time for reflection, perhaps too much. I've been thinking about the path that led me here, not just the crimes that landed me in this cell, but the years of resentment and envy that preceded them. Do you remember when we were boys and Dad took us fishing at Lake Westbrook? You caught 7 fish that day. I caught none. Dad praised your patience, your technique. On the drive home, I cried silently in the back seat. Not because I had failed to catch fish, but because I had failed to be you. That pattern repeated throughout our lives. You excelled academically without seeming to try. You found Claire, a woman of extraordinary character and warmth, while I cycled through shallow relationships. You built a career based on genuine expertise, while I relied on connections and appearances. None of this excuses what I did, but perhaps it explains how a brother could betray a brother so completely. I convinced myself that you had been given advantages I hadn't, that your success was unearned, that taking what was yours was merely balancing the scales. I see now how twisted that thinking was. Your success came from who you are: thoughtful, dedicated, authentic. My failures came from who I chose to be, cutting corners, prioritizing appearance over substance, blaming others for my shortcomings. I don't expect forgiveness, Oz, but I hope someday you might find it possible to remember the brother I was before I became the man who stole your house. Richard. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, unsure how to respond or whether to respond. All Richard's insights into his own psychology rang true, but understanding the roots of his betrayal didn't erase its impact. A week later, I visited the house on Maple Street for a dinner the Taylors had invited me to. As I walked up the familiar path to the front door, I was struck by how different the garden looked. Lissa had planted vegetables where Claire and I had grown flowers, a reflection of her practical nature. Oswald, welcome. Mark greeted me warmly. Come in, come in. Inside, the house had been repainted, furniture rearranged, new art hung on the walls. Yet the bones of the place remained the solid oak floors Claire and I had refinished ourselves, the crown molding we had painstakingly restored, the stained glass window that still caught the evening light. During dinner, their son Jacob peppered me with questions about what the house had been like in the olden days, making me laugh at the implication that my time there belonged to some distant historical era. Was my room your room? He asked eagerly. No, I smiled. That was our guest room. Claire and I had the big bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the weird closet door that sticks. He asked. It always did that, I confirmed. I tried, fixing it a dozen times. Dad tried to, Jacob exclaimed. He said some things are just meant to be quirky. After dinner, as Lisa served coffee in the living room, she hesitated before speaking. Oswald, there's something we've been wanting to ask you. It might seem strange, ... What is it? I prompted when she trailed off. We found something when we were renovating the main bathroom, Mark explained, behind the vanity cabinet. It seems to be a time capsule of sorts. My heart skipped a beat. A metal box? I asked. About this big, I indicated with my hands. Lisa nodded. Yes, with your name and Claire's engraved on it. We didn't open it, of course. We wanted to ask you about it first. Claire and I placed it there when we renovated that bathroom, I explained, emotion welling up. 15 years ago, we put mementos inside photos, letters, small objects that were meaningful to us. We planned to open it on our 25th anniversary. Lisa disappeared upstairs, returning with the box, a simple metal container with Oswald and Claire, 2005 to 2030, engraved on the lid. She handed it to me reverently. "We thought you should have it," she said. "It clearly means something important." I held the box in my hands, feeling its weight, the physical embodiment of hopes and plans Claire and I had made for a future we would never share. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. "This means more than you can know." Later that night, alone in my new home, I sat with the unopened time capsule on my coffee table. Part of me wanted to open it immediately, to reconnect with that moment. 15 years ago, when Claire and I had sealed our hopes inside. Another part feared the pain that these reminders might bring. In the end, I decided to honor our original intention. I would open it on the date we had planned, our 25th anniversary, still several years away. Until then, it would sit on my bookshelf, a promise kept, a future still unfolding in its own way. The next day, I sat down at Claire's writing desk and composed a reply to Richard's letter. "Richard, I received your letter and have given it much thought. You're right that understanding the origins of your actions doesn't excuse them. The harm you caused was real and lasting. Yet I find myself remembering the brother who taught me to ride a bike, who defended me against neighborhood bullies, who helped me ask Claire to our high school prom because I was too nervous to form." The words, "that brother is still part of who you are," buried beneath years of resentment and poor choices. I don't know if he can re-emerge after all that's happened, but I hope prison gives you the opportunity to find out. I don't offer forgiveness yet. That may come with time, or it may not. But I do offer this. I will remember the whole person you are, not just your worst actions, and I will hope that the years ahead bring you clarity and peace. Oswald. I sealed the letter, addressed it to the correctional facility where Richard was serving his sentence, and placed it in my outgoing mail. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that even in the aftermath of profound betrayal, the bonds of family remained, damaged but not entirely destroyed. That evening, I read another of Claire's letters, one she had, dated for when you're ready to move forward. Her words, written years earlier, seemed to speak directly to my present circumstance. My dearest Oswald, if you're reading this letter, you've reached a turning point. Perhaps you've made peace with my absence, or perhaps you've simply decided that it's time to step fully into your life again. Whatever that means for you now, I want you to know that I celebrate this moment. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting what we shared. It means honoring it by living fully, by carrying our love with you into whatever comes next. Remember what we always said, that life is a house with many rooms. Some rooms we share with others for a lifetime, some for just a season. Some rooms we must enter alone, but all of them, even the darkest ones, shape the home our life becomes. You've been in a dark room for a while now, my love. It's time to open the door, to let in light and air, to see what other rooms await you. With all my love, for all your life, Claire. I sat with her words as darkness fell outside my window, feeling a sense of possibility hadn't experienced in years. The house on Maple Street was gone, but I had reclaimed what mattered most, the memories, the tangible reminders of Claire, and most importantly, the sense of home we had created together that transcended physical walls. Richard had sold my house without telling me, But he had forgotten about the legal document I kept, the one that proved his fraud and ultimately led to justice. Yet the greater document, the one that truly mattered, was the one Claire had left me: her letters, her wisdom, her enduring love that no fraud could ever take away. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized that the title of this story wasn't quite right. It wasn't just about a house sold without my knowledge or a legal document that saved me. It was about rebuilding not just a home, but a life. About finding justice without being consumed by vengeance. About honoring the past while creating space for whatever might come next. My name is Oswald Harrington, and this is the story of how I lost a house but found my way home.